Our program today is starting a conversation, a session on some ideas and some tools for transmitting Jewish values to your next generations and also to our community. Our speaker and facilitator is Dirk Berg. He is the Vice President of Plan Giving and Endowments for Jewish Federations of North America, where I've had the privilege of getting to know him and working closely with him, and he's terrific. He is also the Director of Total Resource Development for Jewish Federations. He was formerly the Executive Director of the Denver Jewish Community Foundation, and he has extensive experience in mentoring, community planning, family philanthropy, and developing and encouraging leaders. But I think what he has experience in that is particularly important for us today, for our discussion, is he has a lot of experience working with multi-generation families and particularly in engaging the next generation. So that's all about what we're all about here. Dirk is a lifelong Coloradan and a proud member of the Denver Jewish community. So he deeply cares about the Jewish future and passing on those values. He's married and has 3 children. So he, as we say around here, he does have a dog in the hunt in terms of passing on values. After Dirk, I don't want to tell you the flow of the program. After Dirk is finished with the first part of our program, we will have a panel talk about a new effort in the Jewish community called the Jewish Future Pledge, and how it can help in passing on your values and starting discussions with your children, grandchildren, whatever. And talking about the Jewish Future Pledge, we have a panel of 3. Most of you probably know all 3 of them, if not. I'll just give you a little capsule here. We have Alan Weintraub. Alan Wade. There's Alan. He is a lawyer turned investment advisor for Wells Fargo Advisors. He's vice president of the Birmingham Jewish Foundation as well as on our investment committee, and he's the secretary of the Temple Bethel Foundation and on their investment committee. He has served on the boards of the Emanu-El Jewish Day School, the Children's Dance Foundation, and Temple Bethel. He's married to Danielle, and they have 2 daughters, one who's a junior in high school and one who's a junior in college. Our next panelist is Amy Sagg, who is currently president of the Birmingham Jewish Federation, and she's past president of both the Graveman Endowment Fund and the Birmingham Jewish Foundation. So she's just been like doing nothing. Plus a zillion other committees, as most of you in this room would know, that Amy has served on. She has 3 grown children and 4 grandchildren ranging in ages from 6 months to 7 years, 2 here in Atlanta. And, the 6-month-old might not be ready to get into these discussions yet. Soon. Our other panelist, Michael Sagg, who we've already heard from today, but coincidentally, he has the same children and grandchildren as Amy. As you all know, the reason I had him talk about this instead of me is because he's a world-renowned infectious disease doctor as well as an expert in HIV/AIDS researcher at UAB and an author, and he's first gentleman of the Federation this year. And he told me that he is a wannabe playwright, and I really think you should give it a try because I think it would be a good opportunity for you to finally succeed at something. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dirk.
Good morning. I may go without amplification, if that's okay. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, and hear back. Great. I still have my former camp director voice, so hopefully it will last for the next 45 minutes or so. I would be remiss if I didn't start off by saying thank you. I used this line for some of you who I saw yesterday morning. I'm going to use a line again that I used yesterday, but none of you have to be here. Well, Sally has to be here and a few others, but the rest of you, I assume no one's here under duress or coercion. Is that correct? Fair? None of you have to be here. But you're here for a reason. It's here because you care about your community. You care about the future of our Jewish world. And being from Denver and seeing what I see on a daily basis, talking to communities from across North America, we're creating ripples simply by the fact that we're here. Because what we're going to talk about is the foundational element from which community is built. and that's our values. And the values that you share with your loved ones, with the community, those carry forth with them regardless of where they go. Whether they start out in Birmingham and end up in Los Angeles, or they start out in Los Angeles and they end up in Birmingham, or wherever they happen to go, those pieces stay with them. So thank you for being here today. So we're gonna have a conversation about values. There is an audience participation piece to this. So you'll notice on your tables, there are pads, there are pens. We're going to talk together. We're going to share, and we're going to learn. And hopefully, you'll leave today maybe thinking about a couple things you weren't thinking about before, or having some ideas about how do I start this conversation with the members of my family. So, speaking of family, this was probably 3-4 years ago. I'm sitting in shul. I think it's Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, not exactly sure which. And the rabbi is giving his sermon. And we're in the middle of the sermon. And on high holidays, sermons are slightly longer than they might be at other points in the year. My 14-year-old son, who was 14 at the time, was sitting next to me. Rapt at attention, of course. And the rabbi goes, something legacy. And my son's head picked up and goes, oh, of course, legacy. Planting seeds in a garden you never get to see grow. And I looked at this child, full of pride, going, out of the mouths of babes such wisdom. I was proud, deeply proud at that moment. And he looks at me with this incredulous glance. It's Dad. It's from Hamilton. And I thought, oh, that makes sense. You're an art school kid. But, he made a bigger point. Oftentimes we think about legacy in terms of giving, our philanthropy. And yes, that is a piece of it. But the bigger piece are the legacies that we transfer. Because if we transfer our resources without transferring our values, then we rob the community and the next generation members of our family of something incredibly valuable and important. We, by sharing our values, are planting seeds in them. And all legacy, whether it's about the money we give or the values we share, is grounded in one simple thing. Anybody have an idea? This is where the audience participation part begins. Anybody have an idea what legacy is grounded in? One simple thing. See, this is where I start singing. Oh, yes, please.
Caring.
Caring, that's a great answer.
Giving back.
Giving, also good. What? Values, yes. Values, sure, yeah. Great answers. Tradition. Commitments, all great things. Keep going. Continuity. Future. Action, all great words. We're not quite there yet, but keep going. Any other ideas? Family, really important piece. Communication. Actually sharing out, writing down, codifying. Generational. We've been part of this thing for 3,500 years. We connect to the past and the future simultaneously. And this is just my opinion, but I believe that it's all of those things are part of it, but it comes down to one simple piece, and it's faith. Faith. When we share our values, when we share our resources, when we share our experiences, we have no way of knowing how that's going to impact our community, our families. but we do so because we have a faith that by doing that, by taking those actions, by sharing our commitment with our family, all words we heard, that something positive is going to happen in the future. But we have no way of knowing that. So there's a faith element to that. Okay. So and we celebrated at the very beginning a new period of time, hopefully. We'll see how long it lasts. But where are we right now? What have the last 2 years revealed? What has it been like? And these are rhetorical. You can shout it out if you feel moved to do so. But these are rhetorical. What has it been like in isolation, separate from family?
Depressing.
Yeah, this has been depressing. Lonely. Anxious. But now we find ourselves in a time of hopefully some renewal and some reconnection. And in my work, I talk to Jewish professionals, professional advisors, folks who are engaging with people like yourselves, who are active in community, who are leaders in community, who are donors. And there's a piece that's affecting all of us. Maybe not every single person, but for many of us. That there's a sort of a baseline level of vulnerability. And I don't mean vulnerability from a risk standpoint. I mean vulnerability from the standpoint of because we've been distant from community, family, because we've had time to be reflective and introspective, a lot of time to be reflective and introspective, more than we ever could have imagined. For many, we're closer to that which we care about most. We have a clearer sense of our values, and we want to talk about it. We want someone to ask us, what do we care about? How many of you does that resonate for? The sense of really being closer to what we care about most. Stronger set of values. Yes, some hands. So that feeling is pervasive, and vulnerability in the conversation around sharing values is really important. Because in a minute we're going to talk about the building blocks of core values. And when we share that, we have to put ourselves forth. Anytime we share something about ourselves, it takes some courage because there's a little bit of risk. Because you don't know how, even with close people to us, how they might react when you share something about yourselves. So that vulnerability is both a thing that connects us to our values and a show of strength by saying, I'm going to put myself out there to you and share something deep about myself because I care so much about it continuing. So, core values. There are many values that may represent us. And you probably have different values popping around in your mind of the things that you live your life by. But what's a core value? How would you define a core value? And this is more audience participation. How would you define a core value? Please.
Deep belief that you have in your heart.
A deeply held belief that's probably unchanging. What else? What else comes to mind when you think about core values?
Something that's indisputably correct.
Say that again?
Something that's indisputably correct.
Something that's indisputably correct about ourselves? Yes, others.
Something that is central to every decision that you
Yeah, it really represents the lens through which we view our lives, our actions, our relationships. Do you have many core values, or do they typically come down to a few? Few. Yeah, like really 3, 4, maybe 5 things that are deeply held beliefs, indisputably true. The lens through which we view the world around us that guides our actions, those are core values that represent who you are. How are core values formed? What are the building blocks of core values? Okay, what you were taught. So, and how do you learn something? Through what?
Parental guidance.
Okay, so through people, influencers, mentors,
Family experience.
and experience. Family experiences. What other kinds of experiences?
Observation.
Pardon? Observation. What else? Schools. How about in a Jewish context? What are some of the experiences that might come to mind? Community experiences. Holiday traditions. Rabbi sermons. Shout out to the rabbi. Camp. Israel experiences. Our core beliefs are comprised of the people who influenced our lives and the experiences that we've been fortunate enough to have. Now, I'll share a quick story. I was at a conference several years ago, and they asked this question around influences, and it was under the context of charitable influences, and I really had to think about it. Where on earth did I learn early on about the importance of giving back? And I had to rack my brain because I didn't really see my parents engaged in philanthropy. It wasn't something we talked about. And then I thought, I got it. It was a very prominent Jewish man who influenced the trajectory of my life greatly. I wasn't born Jewish. I didn't grow up Jewish. But from the age of probably 7, 8, this Jewish man had a huge influence on how I viewed charity. Has anybody ever heard the name Jerry Lewis? Show of hands. Let's do this. Okay, Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis. And what was Jerry Lewis known for besides movies and comedy? What else? Telethon. It was the telethon. It was going out and taking a boot or a hat or a bag and literally going door to door and raising money for Jerry's kids. So that was a seminal experience in my life that informed how I view charity. So it's those types of moments in our lives, both experiences of people that help us to develop core values. I saw a hand up over here. You had your hand up.
Hebrew school, when we have to bring a nickel and put a leaf. for
Great.
China.
So there was an action component to that. It was a place, it was an experience, and there was an action. All of these things are the building blocks of core beliefs. All right. So, going from core beliefs, we're now going to transition into the conversation. Now, I believe before we have conversations with our families, with community members, whoever we feel important to share these values with, we have to practice. We have to practice because it might not be the most comfortable thing to say, hey, kids, let's talk about values. Let's build up those muscles and that experience of going through this exercise. So at your tables, and I think there are a few tables of 5, but most of the other tables are either 4 or 6. So you're going to do this with a partner. And we're going to have, I think, 4 or 5 different questions that you're first going to write down. This is really important because it's really important because anything worth capturing is worth writing down. Look at our tradition. We have volumes and volumes and volumes of codified values that we've written down. So write these things down. You're going to write it down, and then you're going to discuss it with a partner. and to share with each other. Part of that is so we can build community together and maybe learn something about the person sitting next to us. But part of it is also for us to practice how we would articulate it. All right, who's ready for the first prompt? You got your pens, pads? Okay, very first prompt. This is a hard one. All right, this is our warm-up prompt. What is your favorite Jewish holiday and why? What is your favorite Jewish holiday and why? So take 15, 20 seconds, write it down, and then spend a couple of minutes sharing with the person sitting next to you your answer. Any questions? Go. Okay, why don't we come back together? I love the conversation. I love the fact that I saw some tables, like this table in particular, it looked like you were having a group conversation, which is great. Some of you were staying in partners. Just before we move on to the next prompt, did anybody have sort of a non-traditional response that they'd be comfortable sharing to your favorite Jewish holiday and why? Anybody?
Not a serious one.
Humor's fine if you're comfortable.
Wasn't that funny?
Okay. All right, well, fine. We'll move on. Anybody? A non-traditional. I mean, Rosh Hashanah is pretty popular. Hanukkah is pretty popular. Purim. Anything that was a little bit. What? You were big. This is the Pesach table. You guys were. So this is your what? Oh, Shabbat. I like that. That's good. Shabbat's good. So this particular question, what is it representative of? When we go back to our conversation around core values, we think about holiday experiences. What's included in that? Family. Food. Rabbi sermon. Memory. Our family memories are galvanized oftentimes by these holiday experiences, especially as our families evolve and as we get older. It may be one of the few times that we gather as a group to have a shared experience. And this will come up a little bit later, perhaps even in the Q&A when we talk about what are the environments where we might want to have this conversation with our friends, our family. And those holidays are often great moments to have the conversation around values, because it's one of the rare times maybe when many of our loved ones are sitting around the table. Okay, next prompt. So when we talk about core values, experiences, and influencers. So I want you to think about the three people who were most influential in your life. The three people who were most influential in your life. However you want to define it. If you want to put parameters on it, Jewish, whatever it is, pick three people. Take some time with this. Take some time with this. Because this is also a piece when we share our core values, and we're going to get to the actual core values. It's really important to provide some context. Like, how did I come to honor and cherish the values that I hold true? Oh, here are the people that helped me to had the experiences or taught me the lessons where I shape my values. So we're going to focus on the influencers. The 3 people, take some time, and then when you're ready, have a conversation. We're going to let this one go a little bit longer, because when I've done this before, it takes a minute to go back and think about the people who really had an influence on our lives. Okay, go. Yeah, please.
Using a past tense verb or present, who have influence or had influence?
Either or. If you have people in your life that are influencing you today, by all means, let's include them. Okay, why don't we come back together? I love the conversation. This is great. If you can hear me, put a hand up in the air. If you can hear me, put a hand up in the air. All right. I knew the old camp director skills would come in handy. So, this is a hard question, coming in cold. Because it forces us to sort of go back in time and think about the trajectory of our lives. How many of you struggled, show of hands, struggled with answering this question? Does anybody want to share, was it a struggle of narrowing it down? What was the nature of the struggle? Anybody who wants to share that out?
It was a struggle narrowing it down.
Okay.
Because I think at least most people were sitting here talking about more than 3 people and various degrees of influence, and I don't think any of us could say we were just influenced by 3 people or 3. I mean, I have an event, so it was a big influence. So that didn't fit a person; it was a big influence.
Oh, we'll get to this. So save that for the next. Yeah, it is. It's hard because fortunately, for many of us, we've had more than 3 people who've had an influence on our lives. This really does force us to find those mentors who are the most important. And it's not a value judgment. It's this, but for this person, my life may have ended up in a different direction. Please.
And I think another reason it's hard for me is that person may have had very little interaction with you,
Okay.
and yet change the course by having a decision you make that then leads to a lot.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be in that traditional mentor-mentee dynamic, because that person had power to change your path. When I work with families on preparing for the conversation around values, and we talk about this as a question, and I sprung it on you today, but I encourage, prepare. If you in fact desire to share with your family members or friends your values and what makes up those values, spend some time. Go through these questions. Write down answers. Scratch them out. Write them again. Wrestle with it. This is really important stuff. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be in this room if you didn't want to do this in a way that felt meaningful. And anything that's meaningful requires intentionality and time. And it forces us to reflect, which it's hard to do in a moment. Any other comments around this, please?
Well, I just think it was hard because people influence you in different ways.
Okay.
It's hard to decide which ways were the most important.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think when we have these family conversations, narrowing it down to the people who influenced me the most in terms of our Jewish identity, that can be a way to pare that down. And you can find different ways that meet with what's most needed or best suited for your families, but that's a way to do so. Any last reflections before we move on? Okay. All right, so let's go. So we've done the people, the influencers, and now we're going to do the moments. The moments. And I'll give you some framing to sort of narrow this down. So if you want the broadest framing, I want you to pick the 2 or 3 most seminal experiences of your life. Ha ha ha. 2 or 3 most seminal experiences of your life. If you want some framing, you can make those the 2 or 3 most important Jewish experiences of your life. What were the experiences that led you to live the Jewish life that you lead today? Or view the Jewish world the way you view it today? Or have the Jewish values that you have today? Or you can make them broader. 2 to 3 seminal experiences that either shaped your life in general and shaped your values, or shaped your Jewish values. And those don't have to be separate. For many of us, they're not. Any questions? Okay, write them down and then share them out, and then we'll come back together. Okay. I'm going to pause this for just a second. Can everybody hear me? Now, we've done people, we've done experiences. Now I want you to write down the 3 values, your 3 core values. This is hard. It is hard, and it's meant to be hard. And don't feel bad if it's a struggle, because this is not the end. This is the beginning, hopefully. Ha! It's not the end. It's not the end. It's not the end in any Easter. This is a beginning. This is hopefully a beginning of a process that you will wrestle with.
Do you know Nick Saban?
I do not know Nick Saban, not personally.
He uses all those.
I know of Nick Saban, but I do not know him personally. So your 3 core values. Okay, go. Okay, I am also facilitator, but also timekeeper. So I am going to move us on a little bit. Just based on the conversations that I was observing and hearing, I wish we had more time for us to dive deeper into responses to this. But this really is designed to be a starter, to give you an idea of the kinds of conversations that you may want to prompt with your loved ones, your friends, whoever you want to share your values with. Because as we talked about at the beginning, our core values being the set of experiences and people who make up who we are, if we don't share that, then we are robbing the generation of a really precious legacy. And that was the reason why a gentleman by the name of Mike Levin, who is an Atlanta-based leader, created the Jewish Future Pledge. And I know Sally referenced the Jewish Future Pledge at the very beginning, and I believe we've got some materials that we'll hand out later, but the Jewish Future Pledge was created because Mike saw a challenge, which is what happens to the future of our Jewish world, and an opportunity. How can we create a framework that helps individuals and families come together and have conversations about values, about Jewish giving, about community? And so the Jewish Future Pledge was born. And it was born with this idea that let's provide our communities and our individuals and our families with something that is simple for them to start conversations. The Jewish Future Pledge, in very simple terms, asks people to allocate 50% of what they're leaving to charity, not 50% of their wealth, 50% of what they're leaving to charity to Jewish causes. Broadly defined. There's not an approved list. It's what's meaningful to you, locally, globally, as a place to start a conversation about what the future of Jewish life can look like. And how can I share that with my family? And the Jewish Future Pledge really is for everyone. Whether you are leaving $1 million or $10 or somewhere in between. It's not a binding pledge. There's no legal aspect to it. It's an aspirational act of what? Faith. Faith. It's faith. It's saying, I believe in the future of the Jewish world, and I am going to leave resources so that it can continue, and I'm going to take the time to share with the next generation, my generation, the community's next generation, my values. Somebody's phone. So that's the Jewish Future Pledge. At its core, it was designed as a catalyst and as a tool for us and for communities to have these kinds of conversations. So I'd like to now bring up our panel for today and have them share with us a little bit about how they view this conversation. So our panelists, please come on up. So if I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to share it with these lovely folks here. If at the very beginning of your question, if you'll just reintroduce who you are, that would be lovely. So the question I have for you is, how do you foresee using the Jewish Future Pledge going forward as a tool for your families, for your children and grandchildren, and how can we use it in the community? And Amy, if you want to go first, since you're closest to me, that'd be great.
Okay, can y'all hear me? Amy Sag. I think the Jewish Future Pledge, among other things, does give us the opportunity to have those conversations, or at least start the conversation with our loved ones, your kids, whomever. It's a door opener. And after Michael and I signed the pledge, I wrote an email to my adult children. I wanted them to know what we had done. I wanted to take the opportunity to briefly explain to them what it was that we had done, because to me it just makes so much sense. I think as Jews we have to take care of each other. We have to take care of our Jewish brothers and sisters. If we don't do it, I don't know who will. And as I sit in Abrams Hall and I go around our community to the various institutions, synagogues, agencies, I am so grateful for those that came before me, for all of you, and for those that came before me, what they have given to this community to allow us to enjoy all the things that we enjoy. But for them, we wouldn't have all this. So that's another message to me, and another message that I can share with our children.
Hi, I'm Mike Sag. I'm Amy's better half. Oh, no, sorry, the other way around. I look at this whole opportunity as converting intention into action. that if you don't have an event like this, or if you don't have a campaign like this, I think down deep, because of our values, faith, all the stuff we just went through the exercises for, I think we have an intention to leave a legacy and to make a difference for the future, especially when we're gone. But it's one thing to have those amorphous ideas and thoughts, but to convert that into action is, to me, what today is all about. And it starts with us, and I think the fact that, as you said earlier, the fact that everyone's here, thank you. But the fact that you're here says that you're more than 90% on the way to this. But do it for ourselves first, act, make that pledge, and then as we maybe talk later how to have that ripple effect, certainly through our family and then maybe the community.
I'm Alan Weintraub. We signed very early on, and for me, I don't even really consider it so much as a pledge. I looked at it as it's really an opportunity for us to teach. Danielle and I, when we had our two girls who are 17 and 20, so our kids are a little younger, we were really looking for ways to share our Judaism and share our heritage, because we felt like our families that came here 100 plus years ago wouldn't recognize our lives now. I'm not going to say that we over-assimilated, but we did a really good job of assimilating into American culture. And so with every generation that passes, just a little bit less gets passed on unless people step up and make an effort. So we sent our kids to Temple Tots and to the Jewish Day School and to Jewish summer camp at Barney Meadows. And they were educated at Temple Bethel, and they went to Sunday school and were confirmed. And they have gotten this love of their Judaism, of their community. I'm not a particularly spiritual guy, but I love being Jewish, and I want my kids to not be the link in 3,500 years of Judaism. We got to America, and all of a sudden, that was into that. So this, to me, is another opportunity for us to add on some of their experience, and for Judaism to resonate with them, and it's an opportunity for us to talk about it. And I'm in the business, so I don't necessarily sit down and tell them what's in their accounts or in my portfolio, but I do want to have the opportunity to talk to them about what's the difference between a stock and a bond, and I want them to understand those types of concepts, and to not be completely ignorant when it comes into their laps someday. And I think that the way that we pass along our heritage and our values is to participate on the boards in this community. It is to direct some measure of resources to Jewish entities locally and around the world, and it's also to have discussions about these things and why they're important.
Great. Just as a follow-up, and not all of you have to answer this, but what do you hope the Jewish Future Pledge will do for Jewish Birmingham?
Well, I think for me, what I hope it will do is to get people thinking, like we've done today. Just start those wheels going, and decide what it is for you personally that you feel strongly about. I think so much of this, Dirk, is just getting it into our heads and thinking about it. Because look, it's hard to think about, frankly, when we're not here anymore. I think that's kind of hard for everybody. So we tend to just put it off and block it out, and we don't, as Michael said, we don't take action, and we just think, oh, we'll get to that tomorrow, we'll get to that another day, we'll think about that later. But really now is the time for us to think about it and think about what's important to us and what's had meaning to us during our lifetimes, be it in Birmingham. You asked about Birmingham. Hopefully you've had some connection or connections to things in Birmingham that mean something to you, and that will give you an opportunity, among other things, to say, yeah, I want to give back to those places or to those things that have had meaning in my life. I want to see those things sustain well into the future for generations to come. And so that's what I hope by signing the Jewish Future Pledge, you'll think about and then act on it, commit to it, make a moral commitment. As Dirk said, there's no law. It's a moral commitment. It's values driven, and you'll be teaching your loved ones. You'll be letting them know what's important to you. I have to say one more thing.
Please.
I found this great quote this weekend that I want to share with you because I think it just fits. I'll tell you who said it after I read it. Whatever you, hold on. Sorry. I got it. Whatever you choose to do, leave tracks. That means don't do it just for yourself. You will want to leave the world a little better for your having lived. And that's by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I thought it really was very apropos of that.
Well, I hope that it creates conversations. You never know where a conversation will go. And I hope that, this sets the table for people to sit down and have a little bit of an awkward conversation with friends, family, kids, and that's...
Yeah. When I started thinking after you asked, what flashed to me was a song by Peter and Gordon from 1963-ish, A World Without Love. And you could transfer that to this event to say, a world without me. So what will the world be without me? And of course that's going to happen. The question is, what do we want that world to be? And just like raising kids, you have control initially, but at some point you transition to influence. You can't control anymore. So this is a way for us to influence the future and not be able to control it when we're gone.
Thank you to our panelists. Those were beautiful responses. This is what the Jewish Future Pledge was designed to do. For us to come together and have conversations like this, and for families and our fellow members of the community to share with us their experience. So thank you for also doing that. I do want to take time for questions. You have questions about conversation? You have questions about the Jewish Future Pledge? Okay, yes.
Yes, I'm Lisa Engel, and so I appreciate hearing about the Jewish Future Pledge. Actually, my husband and I have just been thinking about signing on, and I wanted to hear more about the actual process. Like, how does it work? What do you have to do to be part of the Jewish Future Pledge?
I know the answer, but y'all know the answer as well. So if you'd like to answer, that would be lovely.
Okay, so Sally, it was really simple. Sally sent me the link, and I'm sure she'd be so happy to send it to any of you. Or you can go on jewishfuturepledge.org.
Yes.
.org, and it explains it all there. And then they ask you some questions, very simple questions, like demographic type questions. And then they do have one little section in there that asks you, why did you sign the Jewish Future Pledge? What does it mean to you? What inspired you to do so? And that was it. And Jan looks like she's holding up information in the back. It's a very easy pledge to sign. What follows after that, the action part, and how you're going to transfer that action that you took onto your loved ones, that's the part that maybe takes a little bit more thinking about.
And Ellen just said, Go ahead.
Well, it's also important to understand, even though the word pledge is in it, it's non-binding. So it's important to understand
There's no
it's an
money.
opportunity. And I'll stop there with
There's no money. There's no money.
Right.
Right.
So the resources at the back, there's brochures, there's a QR code that will give you more information, JewishFuturePledge.org, but it's a very simple process. Other questions? All right, let's go to this side.
Well, yes, it's a comment and a question off, but recently, Ms. Lisa was saying, my husband also had been re-looking at our will, and we decided to write what we refer to as an ethical will, which sounds a lot like what the values clarification exercise we did. And in it, we put why we felt certain things would be given to Jewish organizations. So we actually wrote it down. Our grandkids are a little young for the whole discussion now, but I think our children are very aware of how we feel about these. But when our will is dispersed or whatever happens, this Jewish ethical pledge that we look at, it's not just a Jewish ethical pledge, it's just our ethical pledge. What values we care about in our life. And so if you signed it, you could put that with it if you wanted to.
That's an excellent point. You wrote a legacy letter or an ethical will. Those often will accompany an estate plan. The Jewish Future Pledge can go right in that. And in fact, we have a Jewish Future Pledge ethical will series coming up later this month. We'll make sure that, I think Sally has that information, and we'll send it out to you for those of you who are interested in learning more. I saw a hand up in the back of the room, and then we'll come back over here.
Hi, I just want to comment. The only job I've ever had has been working around students. And that's the only thing I ever want to do. And I learned a long time ago that you either teach the values to your children, or the world will teach its values to your children, or the television, or this wonderful horrible gadget will teach your values. I just want to applaud you for having this conversation and continuing to have this conversation. And I don't mean to say this in a really negative way, but the world is after your children's hearts and minds. And we have to be after our children's hearts and minds first, and to take care of them and to protect them and to hold them close. And then the last thing I would say about values and holding them so special. A few years ago, one of my best friends challenged me. He said, if you were arrested for being a good husband, would there be enough evidence to convict you? If we were arrested for transmitting our values to our children, would there be enough evidence to convict us? And whatever your answer is on that, it doesn't really matter. Just start today making that answer be the answer you want it to be. And who are you? Oh, I'm Brian Payne. I'm the interim head of the Emanu-El Jewish Day School.
I think we have time for a couple more.
I want to add a postscript, because the spin you get from this is that it's focused on financial. But I think we all ought to have an involvement ethical will where we use ourselves and get involved in our community and participate in our community while we can.
Well said. It's like we talked about at the beginning. It's our actions and our communication of values that, in a way, supersede the financial resources that we leave behind. So thank you for sharing that. Other questions? Anything else that our panelists want to add before we say goodbye for today? Anything else? So again, we have more information about Jewish Future Pledge. We've got the brochures. We've got the QR code. Thank you for being here. Thank you for investing in the conversation. Thank you for what you're going to do to share your values with your community and with your family members. And I'll leave you with this. There is one thing that all of us have in common. We are all the beneficiaries of someone's legacy. Every single person in this room. Your values are one of the most important pieces that you can leave as part of your legacy. So who's going to benefit from that? Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon. Oh, please.